Oh, hello. Please, first of all, forgive the unshaven look. I'm really not going for the Amish attitude on this. It's just that I've been up writing for hours and hours and hours, and I hate shaving. I never have a beard. I'm just not the beard type. But my publisher, who is behind the camera, Mr. Jason Davis, he who puts out my books, Mr. Jason Davis, is here to talk to me about these 4 books. And so I combed my hair and went back to work, and he's come up and let me tell you about these 4 books. This is a real linchpin in my life. We're now at about 100 books published since I started publishing back in, I don't know, the 60s, I guess it was. And I never thought I would get to at least 100, but we're over that already. These 4 were all done at once, and they are extraordinary to me. One of them is done by my wife. My wife? Yes, my wife. She was assigned the arduous task by Jason of picking one story from each decade of my writing life, which began, oddly enough, in the 40s. I was not even in high school in the 40s, but I did write a series of 2 serials for the Cleveland News, which is now long since gone, and they had a column for kids on the comics page called The Rangers, and I wrote a serial, and then I wrote another serial. Well, the first serial was called The Sword of Parma, and was a direct steal from Sir Walter Scott, who wrote Ivanhoe and The Talisman and Quentin Durward. It was one of my big passions when I was a kid. And then a little later, I guess the next year, I was 1949. It was then. I was much taken with the writing of H. Rider Haggard, who wrote She and King Solomon's Mines. So I wrote the Gloconda. So poor Susan was given the job of picking one story from each decade, and she picked one from the 1940s, one of those 2 serials, and it's in here in 80. And then she had it a little easier because by 1950 I was selling stories and writing for a living. And she's picked any number of stories that I think are really, really nice and I'm very proud of. The 1940 serial, you'll be patient with me. Have a little kindness, for God's sakes. But the rest of the book is a killer. It's got stories from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the millennium, and then the 2010s. And even one of them I wrote around that illustration in an hour. And it's sort of an homage to Ray Bradbury, my friend Ray Bradbury, who died. We're going to be offering 8 and 80. We're going to be doing another book of my crime and men's magazine stories. The first one was called Honorable Whoredom at a Penny a Word, and playing off Dangerous Visions and again Dangerous Visions. This one is called Again Honorable Whoredom at a Penny a Word. And the covers are from all the magazines in which those stories appeared. I cannot guarantee the efficacy of any of these stories. They were written for a penny a word to keep me alive. And one of them in here, in fact, is probably the worst story I ever wrote in my life. And I won't tell you which one it is, but it's marked, and it's got a little footnote right here about that I disavow this story, and you can put bamboo slivers under my fingernails. I will not admit to being responsible for it. But the book in all is pretty good. One of the interesting things about it is that I wrote a lot of these stories for a man named W. Scott. He was the editor at magazines called Guilty and Trapped. They were pocket-sized men's magazines, crime magazines like Manhunt. And Bill Scott was a funny old dude. He had been a comedy writer, I think, for Bob Hope back in the day. And he wore a green eye shade like a croupier. And he loved to change my titles. And no matter what title I put on a story, I put a story title called Thrill Kill. I thought, you can't change that one. That's a killer. He published it as Homicidal Maniac. Well, anyhow, I eventually wrote a piece about Bill Scott and his title-changing obsession, and I called it Naked Deranged Psycho Thrill Demon, or Bitch Slut Gun Crazy Homicidal Rat. It was published under that title, but not by Bill. So there's that book. Then we come to, we've been doing my scripts, all my original scripts, under the title Brain Movies. And this is actually the brainogram, or whatever the hell they call it, the MCI, the IRT, the whatever the hell they call it. A friend of mine, Mike Hodel, used to do a radio show called Hour 25. And Mike developed a brain lesion and was dying. And I would visit him every day at Cedars-Sinai. And the last time I saw him, he took my hand and he said, "Do my show, please." And I did. For a year and a half, I was on KPFK with Hour 25 every Friday night. And those are all on tape. But then I began getting this strange feeling that there was something going on in my head. Now, it was bullshit, of course. It was all sympathetic pains. But I went to my doctor and I said, I think I have a brain lesion. I think there's something going on. He says, "You don't have anything going on in your brain." I said, "Well, I know I don't." I sounded like Woody Allen in the movie where Woody Allen says, "I've got, a brain pustule," or whatever the hell it is. And he says, "Well, go have an MRI done." I think that's what they call this. And so I did. And about 2 weeks later, he called me, and he was laughing. And I was back at work, and I'd pretty much forgotten the whole goddamn thing. But I said, "What are you laughing at?" And he said, "Well, the technician who did this," and it says it right on here, he said, "How old did you say this man was?" He said, "Well, this man is 52 years old." And he's laughing. And my doctor said, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "This is the brain of a 7-year-old. I leave you to do with that as you will. But in here, Brain Movies number 6, which is dedicated to my friend Lenny Bruce, the comedian, who's dead now, of course, is one of my Burke's Laws, Who Killed One Half of Glory Lee. There's the unproduced Honey West, Honey Goes Ape. There's the unproduced, well, actually it was produced, it was rewritten, Flying Nun, that I wrote. And everybody says, "Why did you write a Flying Nun?" And I said, because I was besotted with Sally Field, and I figured if I wrote the show, I would get on the set, and if I got near enough to her, I could charm her and we could hook up. So it was completely amoral, immoral, disingenuous. I don't know how much worse it is than writing for a penny a word, but at least it was honest sex. And that's in here, the treatment and the teleplay, plus a bunch of other wonderful stuff, including one called Love Amid the Ruins, which I was going to do when I was working on Twilight Zone, and I never got around to it. I'll write it as a short story, though. And it's all in here, and it's all the scripts with all my corrections, like that. And that wonderful introduction, naked slut whore, killer ape, whatever the hell it was. And the last one completes my film criticism. If you know my book, Harlan, Ellison's Watching, which were all the film reviews I did for 4 years for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, I quit at episode 49. Well, this has episode 50 in it. It's dedicated to Leonard Maltin as the movie guide. Leonard Maltin, dear friend of mine. And in here you get episodes 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, all the way through to number 50, which I just wrote for this book, plus earlier reviews and later reviews that I've done for Variety. 12 Years a Slave, Bram Stoker's Dracula, A Few Words on the Mask, and a previously unpublished refusal to review a movie called Honey, I Blew Up the Baby. You could drag me naked through the streets and lash me, and I will never review that movie any more than I did here. These books are all really good. Jason has produced them marvelously well. This cover was done by the terrific artist Overton Lloyd, and he did it for an article I wrote about going to see a movie called Mr. Bug Goes to Town when I was just a little kid in Cleveland, and how no one would let me go out to go see it because it was late at night, and I kept sneaking out through the screen window and going up the street until they had to drag me out of the theater. And this is Overton Lloyd's beautiful, beautiful black and white. Overton is one of the terrific contemporary artists, and nice picture of me on the back. Anyhow, these 4 books are the latest, and to get them, all you have to do is go to the address which is down here that Jason has promised me will be on here, harlanellisonbooks.com. If you want to talk to me, you can go to harlanellison.com, and when you Google it up, you'll find a thread that'll say Uncle Harlan's Art Deco Dining Pavilion. It's the only place I go. I know there's a YouTube Harlan Ellison channel. I seldom go there unless I'm deriding Walt Disney or fighting crime. But here I am at my typewriter doing what I've been doing now for 75 years, using this typewriter or one just like it. It's an Olympia, and I have 6 of these office machines and 24 portables, which I carry on airplanes. And it used to annoy the hell out of people when I would type late at night. I would go in the bathroom, in the toilet, and type. Now they've all got the little handheld things, which I can't use. I don't use a computer. If you get a letter from me, you get a letter like that, on my stationery, hand-typed, typos and all. Well, it's been really nice visiting with you. I hope you've been able to stay all along. This is where I work. This is part of my man cave here in the Lost Aztec Temple of Mars. You're all invited for dinner next weekend, of course. Bring what you like. No lima beans, please. No lima beans, and no asparagus. I don't like lima beans or asparagus. But apart from that, you can bring squid. I like squid. Yeah, calamari. You're a nice bunch.